Overhauling the structure of an entire society is kind of a big deal, and King Tut managed to pull that off while he was just a teenager. Here's how. Sources explaining specific details of King Tutankhamun's reign are scarce. We know that he was a kid when he took the throne, that he married his sister, and that he died somewhere between age 17 and 19. He's not even listed in records of kings like his relatives, mainly because he was insignificant compared to other pharaohs, nor is his parentage clear. The best guess today is that his parents were cousins, not brother and sister. More on them in a sec. What we know about his reign comes largely from inference, based on what occurred in Egypt after his death, plus what we know about the roles of Egyptian pharaohs in general. That role centers on Ma'at, the cosmic order of right, wrong, justice, and law that defined Egyptian society. You see, Egyptian pharaohs were considered intercessors between the gods and humanity, and arbiters of justice between humanity and itself. A pharaoh's primary duty was to uphold Ma'at as a representative of the gods and as a supreme judge and lawgiver. In other words, Egyptian religion and law were two sides of the same coin, and the pharaoh had final say. It's hard to impress the full magnitude of ancient Egyptian architecture without seeing it in person. The size and grandeur are perfectly indicative of how crucial Egyptian heritage and beliefs were to commoners and nobility alike, pharaoh included. Egypt considered itself an eternal, unchanging kingdom that would always exist and be in harmony with the gods and the cosmic order. Then came Akhenaten, and he got rid of all that noise. He is likely the father of King Tut, and he basically wiped away all of Egyptian tradition as he replaced its pantheon with one deity, the sun god Aten. He also changed his capital to a place north of Thebes called Akhetaten, among other reforms. And because he was a pharaoh, there was nothing that anyone could do about it. I know what you're thinking. How does this tie into Moses? Well, not to sidetrack this story, no one's really sure, and it depends on which date you want to associate with Moses. The important part is that the monotheistic ways didn't last long. Tutankhamun actually reversed Akhenaten's monotheistic sun god radicalism. King Tut was actually born with the name Tutankhaten, but he changed it to reflect this shift back to the old ways. And just as with Akhenaten's changes, everyone else had to follow Tut.
Give my regards to King Tut, ass.
Because Egyptian spiritual life permeated everyday life, the gods required a lot of goodwill to maintain cosmic order. To this end, priests and priestesses had plenty of ongoing rituals to perform all the time, day after day. Their sole function boiled down to caring for the gods and keeping them happy, while everyday citizens dealt with matters of family, farming, commerce, and leisure. While pharaohs like King Tut didn't invent rules for Egyptian clergy to follow, Tut's reversal of Akhenaten's laws meant that he returned the clergy to their original duties. These traditional roles included custodial staff, cooks, scribes, porters, musicians, dancers, astronomers, fortune tellers, and doctors. There were also various clergy members responsible for festivals, funerals, pre-funeral organ extraction, oratory at public events, and teaching other clergy. These individuals followed highly prescriptive rules developed over thousands of years, predating 3000 BC. But the pharaohs didn't invent these rules. Instead, they were like high priests interpreting the god's will, and other priests in turn carried out the pharaoh's will. While historians don't know a lot of specifics about King Tut's reign beyond his pivot away from the sun god Aten, they are aware of a couple of key decrees he made during his time in charge. These decisions portray him as generous, even merciful. In particular, he ordered the restoration of old temples, while simultaneously ordering that followers of Aten not be persecuted. And when the pharaoh spoke, people obeyed. During Akhenaten's 17-year reign, temples and shrines to the old gods fell into disrepair. Tut ordered the restoration of these structures in accordance with his back-to-tradition approach to religion. Furthermore, he ordered the construction of new buildings, including a palace at Karnak and a colonnade at the Temple of Luxor. At the same time, Tut didn't interfere with those people who had started to worship Aten. Instead, he ordered that they be left alone so that they could practice whatever religion they preferred. We've yet to touch on one major aspect of ancient Egyptian beliefs, and it's a big one: the afterlife. In many ways, Egypt's religious traditions were merely preparation for the afterlife. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that Egyptians viewed life as a gateway to eternity, one where people were judged based on their earthly actions. Hence the practice of mummification, as preservation of the physical body aided the journey to the afterlife.
The ancient Egyptians believed that the afterlife was very much like everyday life.
King Tut would have believed no differently. While we don't know for sure if he laid out specific plans for what to do with his body after he died, we do know that such rules were implicit and would have been followed as a matter of course. Nevertheless, it seems like Tut was buried in a location that wasn't originally intended for him. But this chamber's small size and circumspect location helped keep it intact for nearly 3,000 years, from his death in 1323 BC until 1922. The artifacts found in his tomb included a golden mask, golden slippers, and a special shrine for his organs. It's unknown if Tut directly requested these items, but crafting his burial chamber was definitely a rule regardless.